We begin with security matters in Nigeria, where terrorists in the early hours of Saturday launched a fresh attack on the Dogon-noma community in Kajuru local government area of Kaduna State. The attack came barely 3 days after one person was killed and 8 women were kidnapped in the Banono Angwaku community of the same local government. A former chairman of the local government, Cafra Caino, confirmed the fresh attack to newsmen. He said they are yet to ascertain the number of casualties because the locals ran for their lives at the time the assailants invaded the community. According to him, the attackers invaded the village around 5:45 a.m. on Saturday in large numbers, shooting indiscriminately. Nigeria's Chief of Defense Staff, Christopher Musa, has ordered a probe into the tragic killing of 4 senior officers and 12 soldiers in Delta State. It was gathered that the slain military personnel responded to a distress call after the communal crisis between the Okwama and Okoloba communities, both in Delta State, before they were killed on Thursday, March 14th. Confirming the incident in a statement on Saturday, the Acting Director of Defense Information, Brigadier General Tukur Gusau, said the victims were surrounded by some community youths when troops of 181 Amphibious Battalion were on a peace mission at the Bomadi local government area of the state. The defense spokesman said the incident had been reported to the Delta State government, adding that the CDS has also directed that the culprits be unmasked. According to him, some suspects have been arrested in connection with the incident. Nigerian army troops have killed 4 terrorists in Zamfara and Taraba states. Now, 2 of them were neutralized in Taraba, while the other 2 were killed in Zamfara state. They also frustrated a kidnap attempt in Kogi state and rescued kidnapped victims in various offensive operations. Public Relations Army Director on Friday, Banono Angwaku, said the troops engaged terrorists in parts of Bali local government area of Taraba and killed 2 of them. In a separate operation, troops deployed for counterinsurgency operations in the northwest conducted a successful raid on the kidnappers' den in Kuyambana area of Magawa Migetso Road in Zamfara. The troops made contact with the insurgents and neutralized 2 in a gun duel. Still talking insecurity, the Africa Youth Development Foundation has condemned the kidnapping of over 200 school children from Kuriga in Kaduna State, including another 15 from Sokoto State. The foundation also expressed worry over the frequent abduction of children from schools in the country, saying they are eroding the gains made in the nation's educational sector. Irang Joseph reports.
The kidnapping of over 280 school pupils in the Kuriga area of Kaduna State is the largest school abduction case in Nigeria. The incident, which occurred in Kaduna and Sokoto, represents the 17th attack on schools within a decade, which has raised concern of stakeholders. They said this is increasing the number of out-of-school children in the country and eroding the gains made in the educational sector.
Education is a building block of every society and a fundamental human right, as uneducated children can become willing tools in the hands of criminal and terrorist groups now and even in future.
With the whereabouts of the kidnapped children yet to be determined, many Nigerians say they want their rescue as quick as possible.
We cannot allow this to become another Chibok situation. AYGF calls upon all key stakeholders, both nationally and internationally, to intervene and secure the safe return of the kidnapped children.
We appeal to the security agencies to do everything possible, including the government of Kaduna State, to do everything possible to rescue and bring back these young ones and their teachers.
Stakeholders also urged the government to take steps in addressing the root causes of kidnapping in Nigerian schools.
AYGF advocates for increased resources and support for vulnerable communities like Chikum, after targeted by kidnappers, as well as every community where schools exist in Nigeria, revamping the Safe School initiative. The government must revisit its commitment to this initiative.
They are calling on government to live up to its responsibilities and ensure kidnapping becomes a thing of the past. In Abuja for News Central, I am Idong Joseph.
In the meantime, the Defense Headquarters has assured that necessary measures are being taken by the troops of the Nigerian military to ensure safe release and return of those abducted to their families. The Director, Defense Media Operations, Major General Edward Buba, gave the assurance while briefing journalists on the ongoing military operations in Abuja. General Buba described the hostages situation in Gamborungala, Borno State, and the abductions of students and their teachers in Kaduna State as extremely sensitive. He blamed the prompt search and rescue efforts of the abducted victims to non-timely notifications of troops of the incident. He also assured that the military will not rest until the hostages are returned safely.
We are making life unbearable for the terrorists and their cohorts across the country. We will continue to degrade them each passing day. We have seriously depleted their ranks to the extent that they are now on a desperate recruitment drive. Hence, some of these abductions that we witnessed. Several of their leaders and their commanders have been neutralized as a result of troops' onslaught. They want to use these hostages as human shield for their survival. That is how desperate they are. Nevertheless, be assured that we will not rest until these hostages are returned. During the week under review, troops neutralized 213 terrorists and arrested 216 persons. Troops also arrested 67 perpetrators of oil theft and rescued 26 kidnapped hostages during the week. In the South-South, troops denied the oil theft of over 1.5 billion naira within the week. Furthermore, troops recovered 189 assorted weapons and over 4,000 assorted ammunition.
Now talking education. In north-central Nigeria, Kogi State Governor Ahmed Usman Ododo has called for improvement in funding for education to accelerate human capital development. The governor made the call when he paid a courtesy visit to the Executive Secretary, Tertiary Education Trust Fund, that's TET Fund, architect Sonny Echono, at the headquarters of TET Fund in Abuja. Governor Ododo called on the Executive Secretary to assist the state with access to improved funding for high-impact projects in tertiary educational institutions in Kogi State. Earlier, the Executive Secretary of TET Fund, Sonny Echono, promised continuous support to Kogi State through its interventions in tertiary education.
The promise that Kogi State will partner with the institution collaboratively to ensure that the human capital development of Mr. President's agenda under his renewed goal is achieved. I want to sincerely appreciate you for receiving us on this short notice. Well, Kogi State will continue to partner with TET Fund because you are one of the reasons why our institution is flying high.
Lagos State government in southwest Nigeria will on Sunday launch the Onje Eko food markets, offering discounted prices on essential food items across the state. The markets will offer Lagos residents a 25% discount on staple food like rice, beans, gari, bread, eggs, tomatoes, and pepper. The State Commissioner for Information and Strategy, Gbenga Omotosho, disclosed this in a statement. The markets will be open at 27 locations in Ikeja, 6 in Lagos Island, 9 in Ikorodu, 5 in Ekpe, and 10 in Badagry divisions. The remains of the late Olubadan of Ibadan land, Oba Lekan Balogun Aliokumade II, were on Friday interred at his Aliwa ancestral home around 4:30 p.m. The late monarch, who reigned for 2 years, died at the age of 81 on Thursday at the University College Hospital, Ibadan, Oyo State, after a brief illness. The state deputy governor, Bayo Lawal, led other government functionaries to the family burial ground at Aliwa. There was a line in state at Mapo Hall from 12 noon to 1 p.m. before the remains of the monarch were moved for burial after prayers. Now, Chief Imam of Ibadan land, Abdulganiyu Agboto Omokekere, described the deceased as a beacon of peace and renowned for his unwavering honesty.
He will meet his creator in peace. Let me assure you, on behalf of His Excellency, the Governor of Oyo State, who is this evening unavoidably absent, that whatever it would take to give a fitting burial, the state government will do it whenever the governor comes back to the state. For now, is what we call janazah in Islamic rite. We have given him that right, and we believe sincerely that moving forward, whatever programs that will follow would get involvement of the state government.
This next report chronicles the life of His Imperial Majesty Oba Moshood Olalekan Balogun Aliokumade II, the late Olubadan of Ibadan land.
Olubadan. This royal title is ascribed to the king of Ibadan land. Let's take a quick drive down memory lane of how the royal title of Olubadan came to be. In 1820, an army of Egba, Ijebu, Ife, and Oyo people won the town during their wars with the Fulanese, but after a struggle between the victors, the Oyo people gained control in 1829. By 1850, they had established their unusual succession principle, which is quite different compared with other traditional Yoruba rulers, in that it alternates between two lines, a system where the Baale line, which is civic, and Balogun Isorike line, which is the military, shared power, subject to traditional council representing both lines. It takes decades to groom an Olubadan for the stool, through stages of chieftaincy promotion. Because of the unusual succession principle, where the title is not hereditary in most cases, the Olubadan are usually very old men who spend an average of 5 years in power. But there are rare cases of Olubadan who ruled for almost 2 decades. A typical example of this is Olubadan Kuala Abbas, who ruled from 1930 to 1946. A period of 16 years. From 1971 till date, the city of Ibadan has had a total of 10 kings. Among them is Oba Daniel Akinbiyi, who was the first Olubadan to wear a crown from the first day of installation. One of the Olubadan to have served for the shortest period was Oba Yola Paul Ayodele, who ruled for just 2 months from July to September 2007. Oba Lekan Balogun is the latest of the kings to have ruled the Ibadan city. He was crowned the 42nd Olubadan of Ibadan land on March 11, 2022, after he succeeded his predecessor, the late Oba Saliu Adetunji, who reigned for 6 years. Oba Balogun, before he became a king, had represented the Oyo Senatorial District in the National Assembly between 1999 and 2003. Where he served as the chairman of the Senate Committee on National Planning. He died on the 14th of March 2024, exactly 2 years and 3 days after he was crowned a king. The Balogun of Ibadan land, Oba Owolabi Olakunlehin, is expected to be crowned as the next Olubadan of Ibadan land, is considered the next in line, according to traditional rites. For News Central, Adeshewa Odushoga.
Welcome back and thank you for staying with us. Now, the Education Rights Campaign has called on President Bola Tinubu to focus on utilizing Nigeria's resources to fund public education adequately. This comes as Nigerian students receive the news of another postponement of the student loan policy, this time indefinitely. According to the Special Advisor to the President on Information and Strategy, Bayo Ononuga, the reason for the latest postponement is that the federal government needed to fine-tune the policy. In a release signed by its national coordinator, Hassan Taiwo Soweto, the Education Rights Campaign Group demands that all fees in public tertiary institutions increased in anticipation of the postponed students' loans scheme would be reversed immediately. Now, joining me to discuss more on this is the National Coordinator of Education Rights Campaign, Hassan Taiwo Soweto. Good afternoon, Hassan. Thank you so much for joining me on the news.
Good afternoon, and thanks for having me.
All right, so the ERC has actually, argued that the student loan scheme is fundamentally flawed. Now, can you elaborate on, a specific aspect of this scheme and why that particular aspect seems to be problematic?
Yeah, the first thing is that the Student Loan Act, which is being repealed right now, says that it wants to expand access to university education for indigent students by providing a loan. But in the real sense of the word, the only way that access to university education can be expanded for the millions of indigent students in Nigeria is actually by the way of funding public education, making it less costly and more affordable. But with the student loan, it means that students have to take a loan which they would have to pay for a lifetime. And elsewhere across the world, where you have a student loan scheme existing, it has led to lifelong indebtedness. And I'm talking of the United States of America, the United Kingdom, and other places across the world where you have had the student loan. And so that when you look at the situation in Nigeria, where graduates don't even get employed until 5-7 years after graduation, then you can then begin to imagine what kind of future Nigerian students who are beneficiaries of the loan would have if this scheme actually is implemented. There are other things, that you have in the Student Loan Act, for instance, the onerous conditionalities and all of that. But I don't want to go into that now, especially because, it appears that the government, wants to address some of those concerns in the new bill that has been submitted, to the National Assembly. But what we must say is that the condition of education in Nigeria can only be addressed and assuaged, through the provision of better funding, as well as the expansion of access, to education to the vast majority.
Okay.
And this can only be done.
Hassan, talking about access to education now, the statement also mentions alternative funding, by cutting government spending. Can you specify some areas for the reduction, and how confident are you that these cuts would actually generate enough funding for education?
Yeah, actually, last year, December, we produced a document called 10 Reasons Why President Tinubu's Student Loans is Scam. When it identified over 7 different sources of funding, the government can get resources. We identified, for instance, the security vote, which if caught will produce billions of naira extra funding. We identified the salaries and allowances of the political office holders. We identified the cost of maintaining the president and his family, the vice president and his family. We identified the cost of renovation of the presidential villa, as well as the residence of the vice president. We identified the cost of buying new vehicles, for the first lady, as well as for the offices of the president and vice president. These are huge costs, of governance, which, if they are addressed, if they are, in a way curbed, would mean that on an annual basis, this country will generate an extra 1.7 trillion naira that can be utilized actually to begin to fund education. And we think that if that money is readily accessible, if it's there, then there's no basis for a student loan. If you remember what the president said when he was presenting the new bill at National Assembly a few days ago, he said that they have voted 200 billion to the student loan. That is a minuscule amount to the huge resources that is lying within now, 1.7 trillion, which if assessed will mean that we don't need a student loan. Education can be made affordable for everyone. And that is the point we are making.
Okay, now the ERC also, advocates for a socialist approach to education funding. Now, can you explain how such a system might function, especially in Nigeria with our kind of economy?
Well, the Nigerian economy is not so different from other economies across the world. It's a capitalist economy, based on the exploitation of the mass majority by a few. And we think that if you have a socialist economy, and what a socialist economy means is simple. The key sectors of Nigeria's economy will be publicly owned, under democratic management and control of the working people. And that will ensure that the huge wealth of this country, which is trapped in the hands of a few, including multinational organizations, will be made readily available. To be utilized to fund education, to fund healthcare, to provide jobs, as well as a decent life for all. That is what a socialist economy is all about. Utilizing public wealth for the purpose of generating the best life, a decent life for the mass majority. Capitalism is a system of economy that only guarantees a better life for a few, on the basis of impoverishing the mass majority of the population. And this is not something that Nigeria can continue to practice, given what we already face. Now, vast majority are hungry. People are destitute. There is suicide increasing across the country. We need a socialist revolution. We need a workers and poor people's government that can begin, to implement socialist programs. And once we do this, we will see just how much we can achieve with the resources that exist in this country.
Okay, now there's no denying the fact, Hassan, that as soon as universities actually got wind of the student loan scheme, some of them increased tuition fees. Now, your group particularly condemned the fee hikes implemented by these universities in anticipation for the loan scheme. Now, do you acknowledge that there might be potential benefit as regards the student loan scheme if it comes to play?
There is obviously no benefit, especially when you see what has already happened. As from June, to this year, you have seen over 300 increase in fees just because of the announcement that a student loan was going to be implemented. So that itself already indicates what the student loan is all about. Is a scheme to actually, establish a regime of a further commercialization of public education. Is a scheme to turn public education into a business and student to customers. And what it means is that you can only go to school if you're able to access a loan. If you're unfortunate not to be able to access a loan, then you cannot go to school. That is what the student loan is all about. It has no benefit. The only benefit it can have is if the student loan is turned into a grant to support the living cost of Nigerian students across campuses. Because we must not ignore the fact that apart from paying fees, living cost, the cost of accommodation, the cost of survival, of feeding, is actually a big burden for students today because of the cost of living prices. So if you have a grant that can be given to students without any option of repayment as a free support by the state, that can actually help to ensure that students are able to go through school successfully. And we think that is the only benefit the student loan can have, converting it into a grant to support the living cost of Nigerian students.
All right, well, thank you so much, Hassan Taiwo Soweto, for joining me on the news and speaking on the student loan scheme.
Thank you for having me.
All right, now let's move to business, where economists have urged the Nigerian government to tackle the challenges posed by high energy costs and insecurity, which have slowed down food production and foreign exchange volatility to tame the accelerating inflation in the country. Now, according to the latest Consumer Price Index and inflation reports by the National Bureau of Statistics on Friday, Nigeria's inflation rate climbed higher to 31.70% in February from 29.90% in January 2024. Professor of Economics and Dean, College of Postgraduate Studies, Caleb University, Imota, Lagos, that Segun Ajibola said the inflation rate may not reduce if the economic fundamentals are not addressed. Earlier, Okpeoluwa Taiwo, Executive Director, Africa Bridge Initiative, joined us on the news to discuss this.
When we talk about the inflation as at November 2023, we're talking about 28 thereabout, and as at January 2024, we're already talking about 28, 29, and as at today, what are we talking about? We're talking about 31.7% as our inflation rate. So looking at just within 5 months, we're having more than 5% increase in our inflation rate. And this has to do with instability of various economic policies, basically from the regulatory body, that is the CBN, as also from the state actors, from the government. So that means that our economy, as of today, the consumers are not really smiling, and the citizens are very much unhappy with what we have in inflation. Inflation has never been consistent as of today. Basically, we look at the Nigerian as an economy. What are the major causes? We look at the microeconomic indices that has been able to spike this particular inflation rate. Talking about the unemployment rate, talking about the cost of governance, talking about the import duties and also exchange rate, talking about the forex market. Now, all of these indices bring about various ups and downs, talking about the inflation and the economy. For instance, we are talking about the cost of governance. And every Nigerian understand that when the cost of governance, the cost of running the apparatus of governance is increasing on every day, that means there will be pressure on the market, there will be pressure on the economy, because the target of the government will be more on revenue generation instead of stabilizing the economy. So as of today, we're having too much of cost of governance. So if we can have a way to work around reducing the cost of governance, then the pressure on the economy can come down, and the inflation rate also can be subsided in days to come.
President Bola Tinubu has ordered the reopening of Nigeria's land and air borders with Niger Republic in compliance with the directive by the Economic Community of West African States at its extraordinary summit on February 24, 2024 in Abuja. Perpetua Fasomi Peter has more.
A closure of land and air borders between ECOWAS countries and Niger to be lifted. No-fly zone of all commercial flights to and from Niger is to be lifted. Suspension of all commercial and financial transactions between ECOWAS member states and Niger is to be lifted.
This announcement set the tone for the Nigerian government to also lift the sanctions it imposed on Niger Republic. While the purpose of the sanction was to pressure the military junta in Niger to reinstate the deposed president and return to civilian rule, the unintended effect was damning.
They don't lock the border, we come drop goods. We want the government make them settle themselves, then if they settle themselves, then we should go. We keep here for a long time. We leave our peoples, our mothers and small children.
If we wish to buy the one mudu, one bowls of the rice, before the border closure, we buy it. We buy it at 1.15. But now we are buying it in 2,300 naira. The resident of Elela local government, or the Moda community, we are asking government to reopening the official border.
It's no surprise that many Nigerians heaved a sigh of relief when the Nigerian government announced it was lifting the sanctions imposed on the West African country.
These have economic implication on the two countries. The first one is that the food shortage we saw in Nigeria, which of course is still also affected Niger. The volume of rice available in Nigeria, especially in northern region, reduced significantly, coupled with the fact that there is high level of insecurity in the northern Nigeria. Niger market or output from Niger always helped Nigeria to reduce the impact of this food shortage. How has ECOWAS countries helped their citizens to improve in terms of their living standard? It's a right decision to say we don't want more military to take over territories. But the question is, currently that you are in charge of the economy, what is happening to exports? What is happening to poverty? what is happening to exchange rate, what is happening to unemployment, what is happening to inflation.
Following a July 2023 military coup that ousted Niger's democratically elected president, Nigeria imposed sanctions, which included the closure of land and air borders, halting vital trade flows, and suspending financial transactions. While the pressure for a democratic transition in Niger remains, the resumption of trade offers a glimmer of hope for economic recovery. In Lagos, for News Central, Perpetua Fasami Peter.
Thank you, Perpetua, for that report. Now let's head to Senegal, where leading opposition figure Ousmane Sonko says the upcoming election will not be a war. He made this known on Friday during a news conference, a day after being freed from prison. Sonko reiterated support for his coalition presidential candidate Bassirou Diomaye Faye, also released from prison late Thursday, as the two met journalists.
Macky Sall keroog bi mu ne man doot nekkatuma candidat dañu pare moom du suñu adversaire waaye am na lu gën a garaaw fuuf mooy candidat wu Macky Sall Amadou Ba bu yàlla ñàkkee bëgg Sénégal dëgg rek la ko jox Amadou wallaahi yéen xam leen Amadou Sénégalais question bi ñu waroon posé rek mooy simple fonctionnaire nu mu mën a yor alal gi yépp loolu rek jar na bañ a voter kooku. bañ ma ne il faut ñu reporter élection bi ndax yow ak diw il faut ngeen bokk ma leen sama bokkub élection mënul justifier report élection.
Mais l'expérience de Amadou Ba, personnellement, j'en veux pas. Je veux pas d'une expérience de violation des lois, d'une expertise en coup bas, d'une expérience dans les malversations, les détournements. J'en veux pas.
Welcome back and thank you for staying with us. Now in North Africa, a major fire in Cairo has destroyed one of the Arab world's most prestigious and oldest film production houses, founded 80 years ago. Flames overtook the Al Ahram studio in Cairo's Giza district, burning everything inside and spreading to 3 surrounding buildings, which were evacuated before the blaze reached them. Residents of the neighboring buildings were still sleeping on the ground in nearby streets at dawn on Saturday. Security forces said there were no deaths, though some people suffering from smoke inhalation were treated at the scene. The cause of the fire is still unknown, and firefighters needed more than 6 hours to extinguish it.
وبعد كده ابتدت تعلم ابتدت تخش يمين ناحيه الشجر والشجر كل ده ولع لغايه ما الاسعاف جت المطافي نزلوا كل ده تاني. هو ده استوديو تصوير الناس بتصور فيه مسلسلات في رمضان وافلام بيبقى في حركه في المكان جوه على طول الوقت فهو ما حدش يعرف ايه اللي حصل جوه حتى الان. ده ماس كهرباء وفي ناس بتقول ان ده يعني في ناس بتقول ان ده حاجه حصلت غريبه ما حدش يفهم ايه لغايه دلوقتي.
Tunisian authorities on Friday rescued 34 migrants and found 2 dead bodies off the country's southeastern coast. The National Guard said 34 others are believed to be missing after survivors informed rescuers that there were 70 on board before their vessel capsized. The National Guard is still searching for the missing passengers. Survivors told authorities that they had set sail from a neighboring country before their boat capsized. Tunisia and Libya are the main North African departure points for thousands of irregular migrants who risk their lives every year in the hopes of having better lives in Europe. The International Organization for Migration said 2,498 people died or went missing while trying to cross the central Mediterranean last year, a 75% increase from 2022. In Central Africa, residents of DR Congo's capital, Kinshasa, have shared their views on the government's decision to introduce the death penalty, with some in favor. However, Jean-Claude Katende, a human rights activist, says that it breaches the constitution and is a risky move.
Bon, comme ils ont remis la peine de mort, moi je pourrais dire que c'est une bonne décision pour qu'il n'y aura plus de trahison dans notre pays. Donc je pense que c'est une bonne décision.
En même temps, le gouvernement de la République démocratique du Congo vient de violer ses engagements internationaux en matière de protection des droits de l'homme, mais en même temps aussi, il viole la constitution de la République démocratique du Congo, en ce que l'article 61 de cette constitution interdit l'application de la peine de mort. Mais en même temps, nous ne devons pas oublier que la peine de mort signifie mettre fin à une vie et que même si plus tard on découvre qu'il y a des erreurs qui ont été commises et qu'il y a eu des cas de règlement de comptes, on ne saura pas.
We also understand that land supply routes in an eastern DR Congo town sheltering 300,000 displaced persons and 65,000 residents have been cut off from the rest of the country by fighting between rebels and government troops and collapsed infrastructure. Also wedged between Lake Kivu and the Masasi Mountains, the town of Minova has effectively become an island since M23 rebels cornered several units of the DR Congo's army into Minova Bay last month. The residents speak out on shortage of medical personnel and drugs.
Kijielekeza kwa nyumba kwenda kutafuta chakula, kukutana na vita munjia kisha mimi nilikuwa victime wa masasi kumuguu. Ndio vile wakenipeleka hapa, ilikuwa vita ya M23 na wazalendo. Shida ambayo tunaona tupo wanatugharamia, lakini tunakosa vitu mingi sawa vile dawa, chakula, mavazi. Kusema mate tunateseka sana kabisa.
Tulikuwa watu mingi twakomeretse turi abantu batanu, babiri barapfa, dusigara turi ingomero 3 sasa.
Na wale watatu wewe peke ndio ulivunjika au nyewe wote?
Wale watatu mie nilibakiaka, wengine wale wakiwa transfer.
Bon, du coup, la route nord est bloquée par les affrontements, donc c'est non praticable. Et la route sud est bloquée aussi par des catastrophes naturelles. Il y a des ébroulements sur la route et des débordements des rivières. Du coup, il n'y a pas vraiment accessibilité. Et donc, c'est pourquoi les seuls moyens, c'est les lacs.
Thanks for staying. Now, UN Under-Secretary General for Political and Peace-Building Affairs, Rosemary DiCarlo, says Russia's intentions to conduct presidential elections in areas of Ukraine under its control are unacceptable. She was speaking during a UN Security Council meeting convened to discuss the situation in Ukraine. Ukraine's ambassador to the UN also called the elections a flagrant violation of international law. In response, Russia's ambassador to the UN says that the territories are administratively, politically, and economically part of Russia.
Russia's intention to conduct presidential elections from today, 15 March, until 17 March in areas of Ukraine under its control are unacceptable. The UN Human Rights Monitoring Mission in Ukraine has documented that past so-called referenda and local elections have been conducted in a coercive environment.
The so-called presidential elections that Russia is holding in the temporarily occupied territories of Ukraine are nothing other than a flagrant violation of international law, particularly the UN Charter. These unlawful activities also violate Ukrainian legislation.
На избирательные участки и сделать свой свободный выбор. И пусть при мысли об этом перекашиваются в бессильной злобе лица наших недругов и завистников. Наше дело правое, и вместе мы победим. Благодарю за внимание.
Mexican authorities have buried the corpses of 67 unidentified people, 21 of which showed signs of violence in a cemetery in Ciudad Juarez near the U.S. border. According to government data, it is estimated that several of those remains could belong to some of Mexico's 114,881 missing persons. The North America country has also recorded some 450,000 murders since a controversial anti-drug offensive with military involvement was launched at the end of 2006.
Estamos observando una inhumación de cuerpos de personas fallecidas no identificadas que pues están teniendo un destino temporal. No decimos un destino final porque al final del día, si aparece una familia, podemos reincorporarlo con ellos.
Now, in the world of sports, Nigeria's Super Eagles forward Henry Onyekuru sealed a valuable 1-1 away draw for his club Al-Fayha against Al Riyadh late on Friday night. The fast-paced attacker came into the limelight a few years ago with his exploits in the Belgian Jupiler League with Eupen. He has played in several clubs before moving to the Saudi Pro League last summer and teamed up with Al-Fayha. Now, he has now scored 10 goals this season for the club. Nigeria's men's national handball team, the Golden Arrows, secured a spot in the semi-finals of the handball event at the ongoing 13th Africa Games in Ghana after defeating Mali 30-18 on Friday. Coach Rafiu Salami's team aimed for a decisive win against Mali, who had previously lost to Egypt with a significant goal margin. Despite initial challenges including turnovers, Salami praised his team's resilience, noting their comeback in the second half. Looking ahead to their final group match against Egypt, Salami emphasized the importance of securing a favorable result to lead the group. Despite missing experienced players like Obinna Ani, Salami expressed confidence in his team's ability to compete. Nigeria will face Egypt in their final group match on Sunday at 5 p.m. Nigerian time. Still talking sports, Ghanaian sprinter Benjamin Azamati has set his sights on breaking the African Games records in the men's 100-meter sprint. Azamati, who is representing Ghana in both the 100 meters and the 4x100-meter races, believes he can achieve a historic time despite the young season. At the Texas Relays in 2021, Azamati secured his spot in the Tokyo Olympics and shattered the long-standing national record that's 9.98 seconds with a blistering 9.90 seconds in the 100 meters. And that's all at this hour. But before we go, let's take another look at some of our major stories. We told you that Nigeria Chief of Defense Staff has ordered probe as 4 senior officers, 12 soldiers killed in Delta. We also told you that Lagos State is set to open discounted food markets on Sunday. Finally, you heard that freed Senegal opposition figure Ousmane Sonko has assured that 2024 presidential election will be peaceful. Send your eyewitness report to the WhatsApp number on the screen. Do follow us on social media. We are at News Central TV. You can watch News Central live on DSTV channel 422, Star Times channel 274, Avo TV, and YouTube. Many thanks for watching. I'm Darshan Usman.